The message came in at 4:47 on a Friday afternoon, right when I was closing out a spreadsheet I had been staring at for 3 straight hours. Sophie Bennett's name popped up on my screen, and under it, in bold, impossible letters, "I need you to be my date tonight. Please. I will explain in person. Do not say no yet." I read it twice before I even reached for my jacket. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 31, I work as a project coordinator for a mid-size architecture firm downtown, and up until that Friday, my relationship with Sophie had been exactly what you'd expect between two coworkers who liked each other's company but never crossed any lines. We grabbed coffee on slow mornings. We complained about the same difficult clients. She sat 2 desks over from me, close enough that I'd learned the sound of her laugh through a wall of cubicle dividers, far enough that I never let myself think about it too long. Sophie worked in marketing, and everyone in that building knew who she was. Not because she made a show of it, she never did, but because she had this way of walking into a room and making people feel like the day had just gotten a little easier. Dark hair, sharp eyes, the kind of smile that showed up even when she was stressed out of her mind. She was smart in a way that made other people nervous, and kind in a way that made them forget to be nervous at all. I looked up from my screen and saw her standing at the edge of my cubicle, still in her blazer, keys already in her hand like she was ready to bolt the second I said no. "Please tell me you already read that," she said. "I read it. I don't understand it." "The company gala. Tonight. The one everyone's been talking about for a month." She said it like I should already know exactly why that mattered. I didn't. "Sophie, that's in 3 hours." "I know. You want me to be your date to a formal event in 3 hours. I know how it sounds." I leaned back in my chair. "I'm listening." She glanced over her shoulder, like she was checking whether anyone was close enough to hear, then lowered her voice. "My ex is going to be there. Marcus. He works for one of the partner firms now, and apparently he's bringing his new fiancée, and my entire family is going to be there too because my dad's firm is one of the sponsors, and if I walk in alone, I am going to spend the entire night getting asked why I'm still single while Marcus struts around like a trophy husband in training. That's a lot of reasons. I have more if you need them." I almost smiled. "Why me?" She hesitated at that. Just for a second. Long enough that I noticed. "Because you're the only person I trust not to make this weirder than it already is," she said. "And because you clean up well. I've seen you in a suit. Don't act like you don't know." I did know. I just hadn't expected it to matter to her. I should have said no. I want to be honest about that. I had a stack of drawings to review over the weekend, a dinner with my sister I was supposed to reschedule anyway, and absolutely no business agreeing to walk into a room full of executives and family members pretending to be something I wasn't. But there was something in the way Sophie stood there, arms crossed like she was bracing for rejection, that made the no die somewhere in my throat before I could say it. "One condition," I said instead. She blinked. "Okay. We don't lie to each other. Not tonight, not after. If people ask questions, we can be vague, we can dodge whatever you need. But between you and me, everything stays honest. If this is just a favor, you tell me it's just a favor. If it's something else, you tell me that too. I'm not doing the thing where we pretend for 3 hours and then never talk about what it meant." Sophie looked at me for a long moment, like she was recalculating something. "That's a strange condition for a fake date," she said. "Maybe. But I've done favors before where nobody said what they actually wanted, and it always got messy later. I'd rather know what I'm walking into." She nodded slowly. "Deal. Honesty. Even when it's inconvenient. Especially then." "Fine." She held out her hand like we were closing a business deal, which, in a way, we were. I shook it, and something about her grip lingered half a second longer than a handshake needed to. "Pick me up at 7, she said. "And Ethan, wear the navy suit. Not the black one." "You have opinions about my wardrobe?" "I have opinions about everything. You're about to find out how many." She turned and walked back toward her desk, and I sat there for a solid minute wondering what exactly I had just agreed to. I picked her up at 7 sharp. She lived in a converted loft near the river, and when she opened the door I forgot, briefly, how to form a sentence. She wore a deep green dress that fell just past her knees, simple in the way expensive things usually are, and her hair was down instead of the tight ponytail she wore at the office. She looked like someone who belonged on a magazine cover, except her eyes had that same nervous energy I'd seen in the cubicle a few hours earlier. "You clean up well too," I said, because it was true and because I didn't trust myself to say anything more specific. "Don't get used to it. This dress has been sitting in my closet since a wedding I didn't actually want to go to." "Lucky wedding." She rolled her eyes, but I saw the corner of her mouth twitch. The gala was held in a hotel ballroom downtown, the kind of place with chandeliers that cost more than my car and waiters who moved like they'd trained for it their whole lives. The second we walked through the doors, I understood why Sophie had panicked. Her father, David Bennett, was a well-known name in the industry, tall and silver-haired, working the room like a man who had never once doubted his place in it. Her mother stood near him, elegant and watchful, the kind of woman who noticed everything and said very little about it out loud. And near the bar, laughing a little too loud at his own joke, stood a man I assumed was Marcus. Tailored suit, expensive watch, the kind of confidence that only comes from never having been told no. Beside him stood a woman in a red dress who I guessed was the fiancée, though she looked more bored than in love. Sophie's hand found my arm before I even registered she'd moved. "There he is," she said quietly. "Try not to look like you're bracing for a fight." Am I bracing for a fight? Depends on how the night goes. We made our way through the room, stopping to say hello to people Sophie clearly knew and I clearly didn't. She introduced me simply. "This is Ethan. We work together." Nobody pushed for more, at least not at first, but I caught the looks. The raised eyebrows. The quick glance at our joined arms. Her father found us near the appetizer table, and his handshake nearly crushed my fingers. "David Bennett," he said. "Sophie hasn't mentioned you before." "Ethan Cole," I said. "We work together at the firm." "Co-workers who show up to galas together," he said, glancing at Sophie with a look I couldn't quite read. "Interesting." "Dad," Sophie said, a warning in her voice. "I'm just observing." He turned back to me. "What do you do there, Ethan?" "Project coordination. Mostly keeping architects from missing deadlines." That earned a small laugh. "Someone has to." "Well, it's good to see her with someone who looks like he actually listens when she talks." He said it lightly, but I caught the weight underneath it. Whatever history existed with Marcus, it clearly hadn't ended well in her father's eyes either. Before I could respond, Marcus appeared at the edge of our circle, drink in hand, that same easy grin plastered across his face. "Sophie Bennett," he said, like her name was a punchline. "Didn't expect to see you here with company." Sophie's spine straightened beside me. "Marcus. This is..." He looked at me, waiting for an introduction that wasn't his to demand. "Ethan," I said, before Sophie could feel obligated to answer for me. "And you are." Something flickered across his face, annoyance maybe, that I hadn't already known who he was. "Marcus Hale. Sophie and I dated for a while. Before she decided commitment wasn't really her thing." Sophie's jaw tightened. "That's not what happened and you know it." "Sure," he said, in a tone that suggested he didn't believe a word of it. He turned to me. "So, coworkers, huh? That's convenient. Guess it's easier when you don't have to work too hard to find someone." I felt the old instinct rise up in my chest, the urge to say something sharp, but I'd learned a long time ago that sharp words rarely won anything except a longer argument. So instead I said the truth plainly. "I didn't have to work hard at all," I said. "She's easy to want to be around. Some people just are." Marcus's smile thinned slightly. Sophie glanced at me, surprised. "Cute," Marcus said. "Well, enjoy the party." He walked off toward his fiancée, who was checking her phone near the bar, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Sophie let out a breath once he was gone. "You didn't have to do that." "Do what?" "Tell the truth." That obviously wasn't just politeness. "I told you. No lying. Not even the polite kind." She studied me for a second, something soft moving behind her eyes before she looked away toward the crowd. "Come on. There's a table with our names on it, and I need a drink strong enough to survive the toast." Dinner went better than I expected. Sophie's mother asked thoughtful questions about my work, her father argued with another guest about a permit dispute I actually knew something about, and for a while, it felt less like a performance and more like an ordinary evening with people who happened to be very well dressed. Sophie relaxed slightly with each course, laughing at something I said about a client who insisted his office needed a moat, actual words, actual client. A moat, she repeated, shaking her head. For an office building. He was very serious about the alligators. Please tell me you didn't design it. We talked him down to a decorative fountain. It was a hard-won compromise. She laughed again, a real laugh, the kind that made a couple of heads turn at nearby tables. For a moment, I forgot we were only there because of a favor. Then the toast started, and her father stood to thank the sponsors, and somewhere near the end of his speech he mentioned Sophie by name, said something about being proud of the woman she'd become, and I watched her blink fast, the way people do when they're trying not to cry in a room full of strangers. I didn't say anything. I just reached over and squeezed her hand once under the table. She didn't pull away. The trouble started an hour later, near the dance floor, when Marcus decided the night wasn't complicated enough yet. He approached us with his fiancée trailing behind, looking even more disinterested than before. Sophie, he said, you should dance with me. For old time's sake. No, Sophie said, simple and immediate. Come on. One dance. Ethan won't mind, will you, Ethan? I looked at Sophie first, not him. That's her call, not mine. Marcus's smile faltered slightly at that, like he'd expected me to either object loudly or step aside easily, and my refusal to do either one confused him. She's exhausting when she gets stubborn like this, he said, aiming for a laugh from anyone nearby. She's not stubborn, I said. She just said no. That's usually all the explanation anyone needs. His fiancée, to her credit, looked mildly amused by that. Marcus, less so. You don't even know her, he said, some real irritation slipping through the charm now. Not really. You know the version she shows people at work. I know the real one. Maybe, I said. Or maybe you knew a version of her that existed a while ago, and you never noticed when she outgrew it. The words landed harder than I meant them to. Sophie's eyes flicked to mine, something unreadable passing over her face. Marcus's jaw tightened. You have no idea what you're talking about. Probably not, I said. But I know she said no, and I know you're still standing here anyway. That says more about you than anything I could add. For a second, I thought he might actually say something worse. Instead, his fiancée tugged gently at his arm. Marcus, let's just dance. Please. He looked at Sophie one more time, something almost like regret flashing behind the irritation, then let himself be pulled toward the dance floor without another word. Sophie exhaled slowly beside me. You didn't have to do that either. I know. I wanted to. Why? I looked at her, really looked, the way you look at someone when you've stopped pretending the question is simple. Because watching him talk to you like that made something in my chest go tight, and I decided I'd rather say something honest than stand there being polite about it. She didn't answer right away. The band shifted into something slower, and around us, couples started drifting toward the floor. Dance with me, she said finally. For real this time. Not for anyone watching. I held out my hand. She took it. We moved slowly, not the practice kind of dancing people learn for weddings, just close enough to talk without anyone else hearing. Can I ask you something? She said. Always. Why did you actually say yes to this? You could have told me it was a bad idea. You could have said you were busy. You had every reason to say no. I thought about lying, softening it, making it about friendship or convenience. Then I remembered my own condition. Because I've spent the last year finding reasons to walk past your desk more than my job requires, I said. And I figured if I was ever going to admit that to myself, tonight was as good a night as any. Her steps slowed slightly. Ethan. You don't have to say anything back. I told you, I just wanted honesty between us. That's mine. She was quiet for a moment, studying my face like she was deciding whether to trust what she saw there. I asked you specifically, she said eventually. Not my brother, Not a friend from college, not one of the guys from accounting who's asked me out twice this year. I told myself it was because you're easy to be around. I didn't let myself think past that. And now I'm standing here after watching you defend me to my ex without even raising your voice, and I'm starting to think I lied to myself a little. Something in my chest loosened at that, warm and unfamiliar. That's a start. It's terrifying, she said. You work 3 desks away from me. 2. Even worse. I laughed quietly, and the tension in her shoulders eased slightly. We don't have to figure it all out tonight, I said. We just have to be honest about where we are. Everything else can happen slower. You're very reasonable for someone who just admitted feelings on a dance floor. I contain multitudes. She smiled at that, the real one, the one I'd been chasing all night without fully admitting it. The song ended, and neither of us moved to step apart right away. The rest of the evening passed easier after that. Marcus kept his distance, wisely. Her parents watched us with expressions I chose not to examine too closely. When the night finally wound down, I drove her home, and the ride was quiet in the comfortable way, not the awkward kind. Outside her building, she turned to me before getting out. Thank you, she said. For tonight. For the condition. For all of it. Anytime. Don't say that. I might actually take you up on it. I'm counting on it. She hesitated at the door, keys in hand, then leaned back in and kissed my cheek, quick and soft. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Sophie. I drove home that night with my chest feeling lighter than it had in months, and a strange, stubborn hope that the honesty we'd promised each other wasn't going to end when the gala did. Monday morning at the office felt different, though nothing had technically changed. Sophie still sat 2 desks over. We still grabbed coffee at the same machine, still complained about the same clients. But there was a new current running underneath all of it, something unspoken that showed up in the way she smiled a little longer when she caught my eye, or the way I found reasons to walk past her desk that had nothing to do with work at all. We didn't rush anything. That had been the deal, spoken and unspoken both. We started with dinner on a Wednesday, nothing formal, just a diner near the office with terrible coffee and good pie. Then a weekend hike that turned into 4 hours of talking about everything except work. Then a movie neither of us really watched because we spent most of it trading quiet comments in the dark. It was easy in a way I hadn't expected, given how complicated the beginning had been. Sophie was exactly as sharp and funny outside the office as she was inside it, but there was a softness to her too, one she didn't often show at work. The kind that came out when she talked about her students from the volunteer tutoring program she ran on weekends, or when she got quietly frustrated describing a campaign her boss had gutted for no good reason. About a month in, we hit our first real test. Marcus called her. I found out about it because she came into work that Thursday looking distracted, chewing on the end of a pen during a meeting she usually ran with total focus. Everything okay? I asked afterward, catching her in the break room. She hesitated. Marcus called me last night. My stomach tightened, though I tried not to let it show. What did he want? He said he made a mistake. That seeing me at the gala reminded him of what he lost. That he's not sure marrying Vanessa is the right move. She said it like she was still trying to process how absurd it sounded out loud. What did you tell him? I told him I hoped he figured it out before the wedding, because it's not my problem to fix. She looked at me carefully. I wanted you to hear it from me, not through office gossip. Relief loosened something in my chest, followed quickly by something else, a flicker of doubt I didn't love admitting to. Does it change anything for you? Hearing that from him. Sophie set her coffee down and looked at me directly. Ethan, I spent 2 years with Marcus convincing myself that safe meant slow and slow meant something was wrong with the relationship. He never once made me feel like this. Not once. So no, it doesn't change anything. If anything, it just proved I was right to leave. I had to ask. I know. That's part of the deal, remember? Honesty even when it's inconvenient. She stepped closer, lowering her voice even though the break room was empty. For what it's worth, I like this. I like being asked hard questions instead of having someone assume the worst and sulk about it. I'm trying not to be that guy. You're doing fine. She kissed me quickly, a stolen moment in a break room that smelled like burnt coffee, and it felt more honest than anything Marcus had probably said to her in 2 years. Word got around the office eventually, the way it always does. Someone saw us at that diner. Someone else noticed the extra trips past each other's desks. Our manager pulled us both aside separately to make sure things wouldn't get complicated professionally, and we assured her they wouldn't, and so far, they hadn't. If anything, we worked better together, more in sync, finishing each other's thoughts in meetings in a way that used to happen occasionally and now happened constantly. Sophie's parents took longer to fully warm to the idea, not because they disliked me, but because her father had apparently developed a healthy suspicion of any man showing sudden interest in his daughter after the Marcus situation. It took a few dinners, a lot of patient conversation, and one particularly memorable afternoon where I helped him fix a leaking faucet at their lake house before he finally clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You'll do." Sophie later told me that was the highest compliment her father gave anyone. 6 months after the gala, Marcus's wedding to Vanessa quietly fell apart. I heard about it secondhand, the way you hear about most things involving an ex you're trying not to think about too much. Sophie mentioned it once, briefly, without any satisfaction in her voice, just a kind of tired acknowledgement that some things simply run their course when they're built on the wrong foundation. "Do you feel anything about it?" I asked her one evening while we cooked dinner together in her apartment, something we'd started doing most weeks by then. "Relief, mostly," she said, stirring a pot of something that smelled better than it looked. "Relief that it's not my mess to worry about anymore. I spent 2 years thinking his approval meant something. Now I just feel sorry for Vanessa, honestly. She deserves someone who actually chooses her, not someone using her to prove a point to an ex." "That's surprisingly generous of you." "I've had a good year," she said, glancing at me. "It's made me less interested in holding on to old grudges." A year after the gala, almost to the day, I proposed. Not with an audience, not with some elaborate public display designed for other people's approval. I did it on the same hiking trail where we'd had our second real date, at the overlook where she'd once stopped mid-sentence to point out a hawk circling below us, delighted in a way that had made me fall for her a little harder without fully realizing it yet. I got down on one knee with the ring in a small box I'd been carrying nervously in my jacket pocket for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment, and told her the truth, because that had always been our rule. "I gave you one condition the night of the gala," I said. "No lies between us, even when it's inconvenient. I've kept that promise for a year, and I want to keep it for the rest of my life. Sophie Bennett, will you marry me?" She laughed, then cried, then laughed again, the same real laugh from the dance floor that first night, and said yes before I'd even fully finished standing back up. We got married the following spring, small and simple, exactly the way she wanted it. Her father gave a toast that made half the room cry. Mine included the moat story, which got the biggest laugh of the night. Marcus was not invited, and nobody missed him. Looking back now, I think about that Friday afternoon message more than I probably should. "I need you to be my date tonight." Such a simple, panicked request, born out of a bad situation and worse timing, and somehow it turned into the most important condition I've ever set for anything in my life. People ask us sometimes how we got together, expecting some tidy, romantic story about slow-burning feelings finally coming to light. Sophie usually tells them the short version. "He came to my rescue at a work gala and refused to lie to me about it." I usually add the part she leaves out. She's the one who asked. I just made sure we did it honestly. Both versions are true. Neither one is the whole story. The whole story is that sometimes the people who see you most clearly are standing 2 desks away the entire time, and it just takes one desperate favor and one stubborn condition to finally notice. Have you ever agreed to something you knew was a bad idea, only to have it turn into the best decision you ever made? And have you ever had to set a hard condition with someone just to protect your own heart before you let them in? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.